Wanted to go back to the Olympic Games, your first Olympic Games, and you carried the flag in for your country. Just explain how that was presented to you and how you was asked, first of all.
Can I read my book? I was the youngest member of the team, and they asked me to do it. I just turned 18, and I was the youngest member, and they asked me to do it, and I'm like, yeah, no problem at all. I do it for sport. I'm a sportsman, not a politician, and that was 30 years ago. Believe it or not, 30 years ago in September, it was 30 years. Can't believe it. Remember like it was yesterday.
How did it feel to be asked? It's a big honour, really, I suppose, for any sportsman.
Yeah, it's an honour, but people try to bring the politics in from Belfast. The religious divide that we're saying. They try to make sport into politics, and I'm a sportsman. I'm honoured to do that. So, but the media try to stir up the politics, and it didn't happen. They tried to, but it didn't happen.
How does that affect you as a young man? Those guys trying to bring in the politics, but you said such a strong view against it being turned into politician.
Well, I grew up in the Shankill Road. You know what I mean? So it's a staunch Protestant area, and when I came back from the Olympics, then nobody had a problem with it. They had a party for me. So it just goes to show that, when it comes to sport, people came together. But as I say, it's just the media just like to try to dig into things and try to make something out of a mountain out of a molehill, and it didn't happen, of course. But I say people knew what I did then. I carried the flag for sport, and I was in the Olympic Games. You know what I mean? It's like, how many people get to go to the Olympics? Never mind get medals. It was an honour to do it.
Definitely. Obviously, later on in your career, but as a professional, you was world champion. Speak to me about the emotions of winning your first world title.
Your goal as a kid, as a 15-year-old kid, my dream was to be champion of the world, and I wanted to be WBC champion. I'm not disrespecting any other belts, but I see Muhammad Ali with that belt, and all-time great Joe Frazier and guys like had belts, the WBC belt, and I just liked the green and gold belt. And I knew as a 15-year-old that I had to get some in the amateurs to give me a good contract to turn professional. And my goal was to get a medal at the Olympics. So on the long way, I got to my first Olympics as a young kid. I never expected to be there. I turned 17 and just qualified for the Olympics that year. So I didn't expect to be there at 17, but I got the experience. Then my next Olympics, I was just turned 22. And along the way, I got a Commonwealth gold and a World Cup bronze. And then I got my silver medal that year, and I was going pro right away, no matter what. And that was my stepping stone to get a good contract to be pro. And then I say, as soon as I turned pro, I told my manager at the time I wanted to be fighting for the WBC belt. That's the only one I wanted to fight for, and I went for it. And it was a dream. Going to Japan was difficult. Up until a few weeks ago, I was the only guy from Britain or Ireland ever to go there to win a belt. So I was honoured to go to Japan and take the belt from the guys, his own backyard, and I did it.
What's it like to travel away, like you say, in the opponent's backyard? What's it like to be the away fighter in such a different country to yours?
Well, yeah, going to any country and fighting somebody in their backyard, it's always difficult. There's bad decisions, this, that, and the other. I've been there before, but the only good thing is I travelled the world as an amateur on the Olympic team, so I got to see different countries, fighting guys in their backyard and beating guys in their backyard or getting robbed against the guy in their backyard, and I've seen the politics of the sport then. So going to Japan, I remember BBC were doing a documentary on me, following me for like 4 years, and they interviewed me before the fight. I was like, this is my gold medal, more or less. I missed the Olympic gold. I said, this is it. Nothing's going to stop me. I fought great guys along the way and beat them. And this guy's a great fighter too, but I've also fought in guys' backyards. Nobody's gonna take us away from me. And I went out there and beat the guy. I beat him wide on 2 scorecards, but then one judge gave against me, so I knew the politics, but I got the decision, and it was just a dream come true to be a champ of the world, be WBC champ.
Now, one of your fights, Prince Naseem, 20 years to the day.
It's I can't even believe it. 20 years ago, I could still make the weight, no problem. I'm still fighting weight. I don't think Naseem could make weight.
Yeah, I don't think the rematch going to catch weight there. I think
he'll be fighting at 160 or something. But that's the catch weight. I have to stop training for like a year to do that.
Obviously, Prince Nas was always an extravagant entrance, as it was for your fight. What was it like being involved in a build-up of a Prince Nas fight?
Yeah, the build-up. I remember the fight. He fought my undercard back in 93 actually in Dublin. He was just starting to turn pro. It was my 8th fight. I was fought in Dublin in September of 93, and he was on the undercard, and people were talking about maybe the future will fight each other. I was a bantamweight, he was a bantamweight then, and then along the way, I kept more or less asking for the fight. Never happened. And then I remember in 1998, actually 98, I think it was April that year, April or May, I fought a guy that he had knocked out in like 1 round, a former world champion, a guy called Juan Polo Perez. And I went 10 rounds with this guy, and I looked at garbage, but I was going through a promoter problem before the fight. My mind wasn't focused, and it was a blessing because the year before that, Hamed fought in Dublin against Manuel Medina, and I flew over for the fight because he had said something about my wife is scared of me fighting him. So I confronted him and told him, I don't care what he says about me, but don't bring my family into it. And he knew then I wasn't scared of him, and the fight never happened. That was for a year. And then a year later, say almost a year later, I fought that guy. I looked at garbage. Next day I come home, I got the call to fight Hamed, and my wife woke me up and said, do you want to fight Naseem? I'm like, yep. Didn't he know what the money was? Didn't care about the money? I said, 100%. So they looked at that fight thinking I was done. So that was a blessing, and then we did the build-up. I did a press conference like two months before up on HBO in New York, and he had the media believing that he was going to knock me out. And I just kept saying to the media, I'd worked for the media because I've worked for like Media Ring magazine, Sky TV and stuff. And I'm like, what makes these guys all believe that he's going to knock me out? I've never been hurt, never been down, never even looked like going down. Oh, but he's a featherweight, this, that, and the other. I'm like, well, I've been hit by some legitimate guys, never even moved. But they believed it. And then the only thing I said to Hamed was, when you hit me, you're going to run from me. And he laughed at me. And he said he's going to knock me down at 2:32 of the 3rd round or something. And I remember the fight. I go in, first time he hits me, I smiled at him, put my hands up, and for 12 rounds he ran away from me. So it was a build-up that people believed the hype. But Hamed was a great fighter, of course, but, that night I told him he's going to run from me, and he did run from me. And as I always said, you can't beat the corporate. You'd sign an HBO deal, and all the commentators except Big George Foreman was all pretty biased, to tell you the truth, and they were calling shots they were missing the punch deck because I proved they punched that guys wrong. They actually said Hamed threw more punches than me, which is a complete embarrassment. But that night was an experienced build up because it was like I was a nobody, and I'm going to fight Hamed, and he's going to blow me away. I've been to the Olympics twice. I've traveled the world. I fought tough guys, and Hamed wasn't going to move me. I knew that in my mind. But as I say, of course, afterwards, they started making excuses for Hamed. Oh, he was jet lagged. Well, I remember back then he flew by Concorde from England, like a 3-hour journey or whatever it was. It took me like 15 hours to get there from Vegas. They had me 2 flights, and I had to drive up to Atlantic City. So they tried to mess with me every way possible, and it didn't upset me. It didn't bother me at all. But it was an experience. It was an experience of a lifetime. The build up, and then they tried to play mind games, but I'm like, where I came from in Belfast growing up, as I say, you were a man before you were 10 years old. So nothing was going to faze me, and I experienced life and death situations, and he's trying to mess with me like he's going to do this, do that. I just kept laughing at it. It just didn't bother me. And when I get to Atlantic City, I got a suite for the first time in my career, more or less. So I did my shadow box and my mitt work and my jump rope in the hotel room that week, because the first day I went down to the gym, Hamed's people were standing watching. I'm like, okay, well, I've already made my weight's good. All they got to do is 3 more days of just hitting the mitts, running the boardwalk. So they thought I wasn't training, which is stupid as well. And the fight happened.
You've been pretty open about your sufferings with mental health during your career. When was the first point you realised you were suffering?
96. I was a champion of the world. I was WBC champion of the world. You know, it's the mental problems of people. When you say mental, back home when people say mental, you think you're mental. It's not that it's just that your mind is a strange place to be, because people think because you're sitting on top of the world that you're happy as can be, and they think that. But why would you be depressed? Why would you be depressed? You've got everything. But they don't realise the pressures of being at the top, and at that time, my promoter was manager at the time wasn't getting treating me so well, and a few problems like that in your head, and you're thinking, is it all about fighting? Is it all about money? And it all became people around you were making money, and it was like, so I sort of slipped into depression, and my wife didn't even know it. She didn't know it, and it wasn't like an overnight thing. It was like a 6-month thing. I defended my belt in Dublin, I remember, in March of 96. And after that, I was slipping. And it came to a point that, people talk about killing themselves and cry. I never told anybody. I just slipped away into depression. And then in my own mind, I was thinking about things. And then it came to a point where you're planning things in your head, and then you actually planning what you're going to do. And then it comes to a point that you're not scared anymore. And then it comes to the point that I can do this. And the night I was going to do it is the night that my wife, who sleeps like a brick, I waited till the middle of the morning, but for that reason, she woke up and seen me stand there with a rope in my hand. And she never wakes up. And then she realised then what was going on, and it's a sad situation. I understand it, and people say you're selfish, but they don't understand. You're not being selfish. You're thinking about you're better off being away because you want to make everybody else around you happy. And as I say, I thank God every day that my wife came out that night, because she saved my life that night. I believe in God. I've got good faith in God, and I believe He sent her out, because she sleeps. As I say, she doesn't wake up, and that's the reason why I waited till that time in the morning. And I say it's an everyday battle. Every day, even to this day, you still, people get depressed, that and the other, and me as well. But I always talk to somebody, and back then I didn't talk to anybody. And if you reached out to anybody, I say people have reached out to me since then. People have reached out to me, like I've helped people, and I want to help as much people as I can, because you're champion of the world, Olympic medalist. It doesn't mean you're the happiest person in the world, and people now realise that it can happen to me, it can happen to anybody, and it's a problem that people are going to have, and most people take their life, and because they don't reach out to people and they don't talk to people, and say anybody listening to this interview, they can reach out to me anytime, because I've been there, done that, and I don't want to go back there, and I say I'm there for anybody.
You say people almost expect as world champion that you'll be fine. You shouldn't be depressed. Do you think the pressures of having all the riches and wanting for nothing, do you feel that brings a bigger pressure and can?
Well, I know what you mean. It probably does. But say I had the Olympic success, had the Commonwealth Games gold medal success, so I tasted success before I turned pro, and then I say when you're pro now, you're the champion of the world professionally. And I've understood how people get entourage and stuff like that, because they say people, when you're hot, you're hot, when you're not, you're not. And I was hot, I say 1990 Commonwealth gold, 92 Olympics, and then all of a sudden you quieten down again, and then all of a sudden you're a world champion professional, and then things people around you again, and you get great. I've had good friends, believe me, around me since day one, but I've had people around me who, of course, can you kind of borrow some money, and you give them some money, and you're not really borrowing the money, you're giving it to them because you never see it again. And that's just part of it's part of being a boxer and a part of being an athlete, any type of athlete or a celebrity or whatever. But say it's the pressure you do have pressures, and I did cope with most pressure. To say fighting around the world in people's backyards didn't bother me, but it's just depression's a different sort of thing for anybody. And a lot of people, cry out about it. But if you get depressed and going to kill yourself, if somebody doesn't find you when you're going to kill yourself, you're going to do it. Some people, I understand, some people do say, oh, they're going to do this, do that, but you come to a point, and my belief is you come to a point that you're not scared to do it anymore, so that's the time when you're going to do it. So nobody's going to find you, and you're not going to sit down and go, oh, I was going to do it tonight, but we'll do it next week. No, the night I was going to do it, I wouldn't have been here. So other people have said, oh, I've seen other celebrities say that, oh, I tried to kill myself 3 or 4 times. But you don't try to do it. If you're in a real depression, the night you're going to do it is the night you're going to do it. Unless somebody finds you that night, you're going to do it. So some people cry, and other people then see that and think, oh, they're just doing this. But the real people who are depressed do it, and that's why I'm reaching out to people, because if you're listening to it and thinking about and you're depressed, reach out to me, because I was there. Had my wife not come out that night, I wouldn't have been here. So it was a real depression. Depression's a hard thing to mental health. It's a tough thing, and say, I'm not saying maybe boxing, maybe getting hit up the head helped me to become that sort of person. Depression and stuff like that, I don't know. People get depressed without getting hit up the head. I understand that, but maybe getting hit up the head just sort of made it a little bit easier for me to get depressed. I don't know, because even though I've never been knocked out before, maybe getting up the head gives you some sort of damage inside your brain. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know the answers to that. I really don't. But maybe it does.
Recently, I'm sure you probably heard Tyson Fury is the most, or the last high-profile sportsman to come out about his depression. How important is it for guys in the limelight at the top of the game to come out and speak about it and be open about it?
Well, I met Tyson Fury last week for the first time. My pro heavyweight got to spar him here down in California last Friday. And he's going to spar him again soon. But he was nice to me, and he didn't talk about mental health. He probably doesn't know what I went through. I don't know if he went through the point where he's tried to kill himself. I don't know that, because, as I say, if you try to kill yourself, you're not going to try to do it. You're going to do it. If people have mental health for the depression, stuff like that, and they turn to drink and turn to alcohol, turn to drugs, that's another form of depression too. And I thank God I didn't turn to that either. But I say, of Tyson Fury, I know I've seen all the stories about him, and I'd love to sit down and have a chat with him. I really do. He's going to be here for the next 4 or 5 weeks, because I've been to that door, and he's been to the door as well, where he's turned to drugs and stuff like that. And that's another way of being depressed too. You know what I mean? You turn to something else, and I turned to the end of my life. He turned to drugs, and it's the same sort of situation. He just beat Klitschko. Now he's the lineal champion of the world. You know what I mean? It's got to be a lot to do with that as well. It's pressure. And I say he's high profile, big fight coming up, and that's another guy I say he can reach out to people and help people too.
What do you feel needs to be done to aid mental health issues within boxing?
Well, say that I'm a fighter I've had 319 amateur fights. I only lost 11. I probably knocked out over 100 guys. I had 34 pro fights, lost 7, knocked out 18 guys. Never touched a canvas my whole career in the gym or as an amateur or pro. Never touched a canvas. But I get hit up the head training for fights, in the fights. And I say, because I'd never been knocked out, you don't go to hospital after a tough fight. You know what I mean? You don't go to like there's certain fights I've been in where I've won fights, but my mind felt foggy, as if I was in fog for a few days. So there's got to be some sort of damage in your head that messes with your balance, your brain balance, and it's got to do something. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I've always get checked out. I've always been checked out by doctors, MRI scans, and I've always been clean. But I say a few years after a fight, like the Cleveland Clinic test, I did that test a few years after, like 5 years out of the ring, you had to be. I even passed that one. So, but I'm not saying there's still not damage in there, and other fighters who do get knocked out, I believe, would have more damage, and it might lead to some sort of depressions or whatever. And it could. I don't know. I don't know the answer. I'm not a doctor, but if they did a study on this, maybe they'd find something. You get hit the head. Maybe that does something to you, and say there could be some sort of help from doctors to help some fighters who don't even make it to the top, who become, even a journeyman fighter who become, punch drunk, whatever that. Maybe there's something that can help these guys to not get this. Maybe there's a drug they can take to help them from getting, punch drunk, dementia, stuff like that fighters end up getting. And I say, thank God I didn't get that sort of stuff. And I say, I'm still young enough. There's still plenty of time. But there's got to be some sort of help out there for boxers. But after, I say, my experience with boxing, after it's all said and done, that if you're not, most fighters end up not being involved in the sport anymore, and it's like 90% or more of the fighters end up have to go working again because they don't make enough money to live off. So they got to try to start from scratch and get a day job, and then they, if their faculties are gone, like if they're a bit punch drunk and stuff like that, then they end up maybe over here. They can end up in the streets. And back home, you can end up in the streets too. But if the only good thing about back home is you have unemployment for as long as you want. Over here, you get unemployment for 6 months, and you're done. You're on your own. So it's a different ball game over here. So there's got to be some sort of thing that can help boxers. But to say, look into maybe boxers themselves. Maybe boxers they tried to start a union in England like long time ago, but there was no support system for anybody, if you ask me. And I think if he started some sort of unions for boxers, pensions for boxers, it can happen, because they have it in football, they have it in American football, they have it in basketball, they have it in other sports. And boxing is one of the sports that generates like big money when it comes to big fights, like Floyd Mayweather's fight with Conor McGregor, and generated so much money. Canelo, Triple G can generate much money. Even the smaller cards, smaller promoters and stuff like that, if they had a pension scheme for boxers, at least when boxers retire from boxing when they're young still, they'll have some sort of small sort of income coming in, but they don't have it, and it's unfortunate that they don't have it, because say 90% of boxers end up, they're not making that much money anyway, and they do it for a sport. But as I say, football, basketball, some of the players, defensive linebackers, whatever they are, and they end up with pensions, stuff like that, and they're not the forefront. They're not in the forefront like the quarterback or something like that. So until boxing gets that sort of help, boxers just going to end up broke on the streets, maybe, or whatever, or end up punch drunk, whatever. Unfortunately.
I definitely agree. And finally, just last thing I wanted to ask you and talk about, Wayne, was you're a WBC ambassador for Peace and Goodwill.
Yeah.
How did this role get offered to you, and what does the role entail?
It was after my fight in 2005 against Oscar Larios. They just approached me, and Mauricio Suleiman, the president, and his dad at the time, they love me. I'm still the only fighter from Ireland to win a WBC belt in the history of boxing, so it's something. And he just made this role for me, for peace and goodwill in sports around the world. Since that time, I think Klitschko and stuff have been an ambassador too. It's more or less been a role model for kids, talking to kids, and more or less keeping kids off streets and stuff like that, and giving them, let them focus on maybe something like boxing that, you don't have to come from a ghetto to do boxing, you know what I mean? Because, I came from a ghetto, but it doesn't mean my daughter, who's 20 years old, if she decided to fight, she's not from the ghetto. People always say you have to come from the ghetto to be a real fighter. No, you don't, because all the former world champions of the past and present, their kids are not coming from the ghetto. We made a better life for them kids. And because if you come from Santa Monica or Beverly Hills, does that mean you can't fight? You know what I mean? So you reach out to kids of all generations, of ones here living in the ghettos, ones here living in rich neighborhoods, and maybe they can have a career in boxing, whether they're rich or poor, and try to keep them off the streets. Whether you're in the ghetto, you could be doing drugs on the streets. You could be a rich kid who's doing drugs as well. I mean, it's not just about working class people. There's drugs around everywhere, and it's to keep the kids clean, straight, and on a better path. And I think the being an ambassador for the WBC, it's an honor for me, and I'm always honoured to be their guy and to be their first and still their only WBC champion. So I think that's why they made it for me.
Fantastic. Wayne, that's everything I had to ask yourself, really, so I really, really appreciate your time.
No problem at all. Happy.